In association with Get a Tax Rebate, 1895 Sports, Mesa Vienna Aesthetics, CDX Security. Okay, welcome to another episode of the Oddball Woody Show, where today we've got our first female guest since we transitioned over to doing the podcast on my own, and it's from the sport of boxing. She comes from good stock, actually, because her brother is professional rugby league player Andrew Dixon, and it's Rhiannon Dixon. How are you doing, Rhiannon?
Hi, I'm great, thanks. What an introduction.
I know, sorry, I spoke more about Andrew than you then.
I know, is this about Andrew or me? He's always got the limelight. But I think I'm taking over now as like my dad's favourite sporty child, so.
Do you know what? Like, I've said it, I'm not just saying it, but I've said it for a couple of years because we've done a bit of sparring together and stuff, and I'm not saying I'm a good boxer by any means, but I've said it for a few years now that you are the next big thing in boxing, because the skill level that you've got, the fitness and the strength that you've got is just like, it's unreal for and this is no disrespect to female athletes, but for a female athlete, I've just never seen, you see people training in the gym, some of the female boxers, and you're just light years ahead of them.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, I'm just trying to, like learn as much as I can because I'm so new to the sport. I think I've only been boxing for about 4 or 5 years. So I'm just trying to get as much experience as I can. And obviously, sparring people like Natasha Jonas, Terry Harper, Chantel Cameron, and Savannah Marshall, I can only get better because I'm learning from the best, really.
I mean, yeah, exactly. 4 or 5 years is not a long time in the sport when you compare it to some of the other fighters and the sparring partners that you've got. But what do you think made you become so natural to it, really? Because you was like a duck to water, weren't you? Because you came in there, all of a sudden you're hitting bags and you look like a blonde-haired Mike Tyson.
I don't know. I think I've always been quite sporty. Like my family's always really sporty, and I think maybe doing dance from like such a young age, like that might maybe translate, with the footwork and stuff. And kind of like when I'm boxing or on the pads, I always do feel of it like a dance, and like I love listening to music whilst I'm doing it because I just think of it as like a dance, and then I don't feel like, oh, I'm dead tired. So maybe it's that. And when I stopped doing dance, I started doing CrossFit. I was really interested in that. So I've kind of always kind of had that little power. And I feel like I do look a bit like a little stocky. Like when I was younger, people used to say I had legs like a rugby player. So maybe I've always just been like that.
What sort of dancing was it that you took part in?
It was ballet tapa modern, so like really like classical dance. And I did that from when I was like 2 or 3 till when I was about like in my teenage years, so quite a long time.
That's like quite a contrast, really, to going from ballet to boxing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what my mum was saying it the other day. She was like, we put so much money and time and effort into you to being a dancer. And my sister was a really, really, really good dancer. And she was like, and I never thought, you'd be a boxer. And I was like, well, some things just work out that way.
What's been the biggest challenge for you as coming into the sport and being relatively a newcomer?
I think, I started off on the unlicensed scene. I didn't really know too much about boxing when I started. And I didn't know it was like, you have the amateurs and you have this unlicensed. So I kind of just fell into white collar route, and so not getting the attention that you do when you're an amateur. They start at the fundamentals and go through that way, whereas I kind of like got thrown into like sparring way and kind of like sink or swim. So that was quite challenging, and obviously being a girl in the sport, when I do interviews, like I look at the comments and it's all quite sexist remarks. I mean, it doesn't bother me personally because I'm used to it, but I just think, you think in 2021 people would not just look at me and think, oh, like, go and make a sandwich, or, you know, she's like a 6 out of 10. Like, they look at me and think, oh, look at the video, she's decent. So probably that. I mean, when I went to when you go for your assessment at the British Boxing Board of Control, I went with Ross, my boyfriend, and they went, "You're right, mate. What's your name?" And I was like, "Oh no, it's actually me. Like, I'm I'm coming to get my assessment." They're like, "Oh, so you must be Rhiannon then, because like obviously it's the only girl." So yeah, probably stuff like that.
Did you have sort of a passion for boxing, like as from a spectator's point of view, before you actually got into boxing?
I was more into like MMA. I mean, I watched at the time before I started boxing. I was a massive fangirl of Ronda Rousey, and so I'd watch her and I'd be like, "Oh my god, she's amazing." I wanted to be like her, and I wasn't really too much into the boxing. Like, I watched the big fights, like Pacquiao and Hatton and Mayweather and Hatton, but I wasn't really like, female boxing wasn't a massive thing then until like Katie, Natasha, and Nicola Adams crossed over, and that's when, and Chantel, I think she crossed over at the same time, and that's when I started really getting into like female boxing and watching other boxing shows. But now like, boxing's on every weekend, isn't it? And it's always on our TV because Ross loves it and I love it now as well. So can't get away from it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just boxing. I mean, the female sports now are just taking over massively. I mean, the females Super League rugby league is kicking off today, and you know, I'm a big fan of it. I'll be tuning in, watching it on my iPad later. But I mean, female sports now, it's how can I put it? Because I think what the difference now is that there's a lot of sports science coming to female sports, which you probably didn't have before, and they're also training, getting a lot better quality training. So the product is really, really good. I mean, the rugby league, I love it. I can watch the female football. I watch the female boxing. I mean, in terms of the boxing, I when I grew up, it was a lot of it was Jane Couch, but that was the only female boxer I could tell you from that era. But now there's quite a lot of female boxers who were making a name for themselves, and she was probably the one that made a brand for herself and appeared on TV and other programs and stuff. Where now a lot of these female boxers are branding themselves really good, and they are getting a good name for themselves and getting great sponsorship deals.
Yeah, definitely. And you've hit the nail on the head. I think with female sport, it never got the attention, or like males did, like with the strength and conditioning and things like that. But now it's getting the attention it deserves. And like you said, the product's amazing. Like, looking at the female fights, most of them steal the show on the boxing shows. Like, who fought the other week? Was it Ebony and Shannon Corney? Ebony Bridges, I don't know whether you saw it, that stole the show. And Savannah Marshall, every time she fights, she steals the show.
Yeah, I mean, last week my Twitter feed, just flicking through it, was constantly around the female boxing, to the point where there was 3 or 4 tweets saying not just the best women's fight I've seen, but potentially the best boxing match I've seen. And that's some of the exposure that it's getting now. And it's great for boxing. I think, having Eddie Hearn involved in boxing is really good at promoting sport. But, I think if there's any sport that's going to, be as big as the male game, I think boxing's got a great chance with Eddie Hearn pushing it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you can see with UFC, the females have been getting like the same attention as the men for a long time. And like, people tune into like Amanda Nunes, she's like a headline fight, and all the UFC Dana White promotes the females like massively. I think is Eddie Hearn the only? Does Frank Warren have any girls? I don't think he has any girls.
As far as I'm aware, no. I can't name any off the top of my head. But...
No, but Eddie does so much for women's boxing. Like, he like 80% of the shows have a female fight on it, so it's just really good for the sport.
And the other thing as well is that you can sort of you spoke about stereotypicalizing people, as boxers, you know, and you just mentioned Ebony Bridges there. You know, she's got the blonde hair, she's got the big boobs. She doesn't look like a boxer.
No.
All this exposure, and people are basically saying, look, this is one of the best, you know, boxing fights we've seen. Never mind women's, it's one of the best we've seen. So it's breaking down a lot of stigmas, isn't it, around it?
Oh yeah, definitely. In the lead up to the fight, like I think she's just really like a smart person, and she really knows how to market herself. And she blew up the fight. Like they even had one of them sit down table things, like interviews with each other. I think she's just yeah for Shannon and Ebony, and I think she's just done like even that one fight. She's just done so much. So hopefully she gets on another show because she put up a really good performance. I think she only fought like a few weeks before that as well. So she was straight from camp into another camp.
And the aftermath of the fight as well, to see her with the black eye, one of the worst black eyes I've seen from a boxing match. But you women can hit.
I know, and she fought for 2 rounds with it as well. And I think I saw a picture where it was like, did some guy like flop on the floor in some football match? Saw you something? I don't know, but I saw a thing, and apparently he's like done one of them things where they like, did he fall and like roll over? I don't know. I don't watch football, but they were comparing it like, so he's like hit one of the football players is like tapped this guy and he's gone, oh no. And then it's a picture of Ebony with a massive thing saying like she fought for 2 rounds with an eye like that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, again, you know, just going back to what I said there, I think the information that we've got now in terms of like the sports science and the training and everything around it, it's advanced so much over the last 25, 30 years. And the women's game now, in everything that they do, they're getting these opportunities that the men have had. I'm not saying that, women are going to become as strong and as powerful as men, because genetically we know that, men are stronger, but there's definitely, some real sort of venom in them fights, and it's not a cat fight. What I'm trying to say, you know what I mean? It's a proper boxing match, to the point where I wouldn't get into the ring with any of those girls.
Yeah, and I think it's like they play to their strengths. So women like Katie Taylor's punches are unbelievably fast. I don't think I've ever seen anyone with faster punches. So because it's 2 minutes rounds, it's so fast paced. So that's why I think it's so entertaining to watch. Like, yeah, you might not get the knockouts because you don't have that third minute where everyone's dead tired, but you do still get knockouts. Like Savannah, she's knocked out nearly every one of her opponents. But I think it's so entertaining to watch because it is so fast paced, and they, like Shannon and Ebony, they stood there toe to toe just throwing at each other, but like skillfully, not just like you said, like a cat fight like that. Like it was a skillful fight.
Yeah. So just going back to the start of this journey, we know you was into your ballet, you grew up quite sporty, you've been into your CrossFit. Just take us back to day one where you decided that, I wanted to do boxing. What was the thought process behind it? Was it always to be like, I'm going to give this a go, I want to be a professional fighter, or was there another reason to it?
No, it was more just like I was a bit chubby at the time, and I saw Ronda Rousey on TV, and I thought, oh my god, she's amazing. Like I was just fangirling, and I thought I want to do a sport where I don't realize, like, you don't know that you exercising, and I just want to lose weight. Because when you go to the gym and you're running on a treadmill, it's boring and there's no motivation for it. So I initially wanted to do MMA. So I got in touch with Mike Grundy, and he was like, oh, if you've not done any slight form of mixed martial arts before, try boxing first. So he got me in touch with my old coach. And then I just did privates because I was quite like, going into a gym, like a boxing gym especially, it's quite intimidating for a girl. So I had privates, and then like I plucked up the courage to like go to the main lessons. And then I realized like you said, I picked it up really easily. So then he was like, oh, well, why don't you try and like go and have a fight? So then I had a few fights on the white collar scene, and then there was no one really left to fight. And James had recently turned professional and he was doing amazing. So my old coach was like, oh, well, why don't we try and go professional? So then we did, and then had 2 fights as a professional, and then changed gyms, and now I'm with Ankrolla.
So leading up to that, you've had some training there. You've gone in. At the time when you'd first started, I'd just retired from rugby, and I decided that I was going to do some boxing, but not in a serious capacity. It was just basically go and hit some pads, and I just want to have a couple of fights and sort of just, how can I explain, get a bit of contact, because I missed that contact element of rugby, and I couldn't play rugby anymore, so I thought I'll do some boxing. And I walked into the gym, and you're there, and you've got your long blonde hair, you know, good-looking girl, and everyone's, oh, that's Rhiannon Dixon's sister. Next minute, Lee says to me, right, come on, if you want to do some sparring, get your gum shields in. And he throws me into the ring with you. And like, next minute, you're just like jabbing me, and you're just hitting me with everything you got. And I thought, hang on a minute, there's something in this here. So what was the thought process as you're going into the gym? You're fighting all these lads. Like, what was it? Was it always to sort of get like into the fighting scene and just jump onto a few local shows, or did you from the day one, did you think, you know what, I'm going to do the professional route?
I think initially it was just like get a few fights and do it that way. I didn't really see me being as a professional boxer, because obviously I'm a pharmacist, so I didn't think I'd be able to do two together. And then as time progressed and I started stopping girls in the fights, that my coach was like, oh, well, why don't we try and go professional? Like, literally, there's no one left for you to fight. And then obviously my mum and dad weren't very happy about it, because they were like, you've got such a good job, like, why would you want to ruin it? But obviously, you know, once you fall in love with like a sport, you can't stop yourself from doing it. So then I kind of just fell into it.
Do you think that early, again, because it's difficult for women, because, you know, I've been to a few boxing gyms and you don't get many women in there who want to. I think at the time when we was training at Blundell's gym, I think Lindsay was one of the girls who would get in the ring regular, but it must be hard to get training partners. So do you think fighting with the men the male fighters that were in there, do you think that put you in good stead in your early days?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it was an adjustment for like lads to spar me, because, you know, no one wants to hit a girl, and especially like, you know, I'm only like small and blonde, like they probably just don't want to hit me. But they got over it fast, because I'd hit them, and then they probably just get like annoyed with me. So yeah, I feel like it did, because it was kind of like you just have to get over it and do it. So I was anxious at first, but I just thought, you know what, I'll get in the ring, and what's the worst that can happen? Like, yeah, you break your nose, fine, it'll heal, like there's no issue.
Yeah, I was one of them people where, you know, when Lee said stand in front of you, I'd be like boxing you. You hit me with a few, and I thought, fuck this, she's getting it back in.
How do you think I feel standing in front of you? You're like 6 foot and like that. And then I thought, I'm going to have to spar this guy. I'm just going to hit him in his body and hopefully it hurts.
but the thing with you is that you move really well. You know, I'm not a boxing coach, I'm not a boxing expert, but just the way that you moved, and to say, like, say you was relatively new when I was training with you down at Lee's, and you just moved really well.
Oh, it's probably because I did dancing. That's what I probably think it was. But I just, it's probably because I didn't want to get hit, to be honest. So I thought I have to get good at moving, because I don't like being hit.
So you went. I know you was training at Lee's gym, and you've just touched on it there that you're training now with Anthony Corolla, who I've interviewed Anthony for the show as well. He's got a really interesting story. It seems like a really down to earth guy, very, very professional, and he touched on the fact that he made the best out of what he had, and he was just a really hard worker, and he knew that he was limited on talent, but he really, really pushed himself more than anybody else. Has he made a big difference in where you're going in your career?
Oh, completely. Our whole training's just changed around, and I'm so fortunate that he's been able to work around, me working at the hospital and my manager's working around me training. So I've really been fortunate in that sense. But just the way of training, he's very like he wants your defense to be amazing and he wants everything to be done correctly. Whereas I was like, me and James when we went, we were very like rough around the edges, but he's kind of like focused on, like the fundamentals and thought, you know what, they've got the good fighters because they wouldn't have got to where they are, if they weren't. But he just needs to like polish us, and because we haven't got that experience of being amateurs from like such a young age, he's got to just kind of like go back to basics and get them done really well, and then we can move on from there. So yeah, and obviously, Ant works with my strength and conditioning coach Tim, and they're always talking about what's next and how to do these things. And so I'm really fortunate that I have been able to, train with Ant and have Tim at the same time.
At Get a Tax Rebate, we make it easy for you or your business to claim back thousands of pounds in tax. Most people, like Jane and Philip, don't realise that they are owed money from HMRC, so they never claim. All you need to do is fill out a simple form on our website and we'll do the rest. It's that simple. We've also helped business owners claim back millions of pounds in research and development R&D tax credits. So if you're working in a business or own one, contact us today to see if we can help you claim back tax and improve your cash flow. Get a Tax Rebate, your tax refund concierge.
$18.95 Sports and State of Mind, the ultimate lineup.
Micky Vienna Aesthetics based in Wigan. For all your wrinkle treatments, dermal fillers, lip enhancement, energy boost injections, immune boost injections, please visit us on Facebook or Instagram at Micky Vienna Aesthetics.
CDX Security, proudly supporting rugby league.
So what do you think's been like the main difference there? Because each gym has their own philosophy in terms of how they want to train and how they teach the fighters to fight. And, it's that old saying, there's, in rugby terms, there's more than one way to skin a cat. The way that Wigan train is different to Warrington, and the way Warrington train will be different to Castleford, etc. And, so what have you seen as a big difference there from training, moving over from Lee's gym over to Anthony's?
I think one of the massive differences is, and like I used to be a very come forward fighter, and I could take like one to give three or take three to give one. And he really wants me to, because he saw that I've got good footwork, he really wants me to focus on being in and out and not being hit. So a lot of times with sparring, he'll be like, right, okay, this round, just don't get hit. And, whereas in the past, it'd be more like win every round, go forward, do this, do that. Whereas Ant's like, let's just focus on not being hit. This is just practice, and everything's just like, he's just very like, pays massive attention to detail. So even when I'm on the bags, he's staring, watching me. Like, so it used to be quite uncomfortable at first, and I'd be there like after one round sweating, like, is that good? Like, because you feel like you're under so much pressure. But now I'm used to it. But literally, like, he's just so like, pays so much attention to detail. Like, he'll just stand and watch you on the bag, and he'll be like, right, okay, you're not throwing that right, do it this way. Or like, I used to throw with my chin up like that, and he'd be like, right, and like he'd stop me and be like, right, you need to do it this way. So I think that's a massive difference, and I think people will be able to see that when, well, people have been saying it now, will look like sharper and stronger and faster, and it's because he's tweaking all these little bits all the time, watching me all the time so that I do everything correct. Like, like when you've been on the bags before, you go, oh, and then you'll have like 30 seconds where you just like stand there and you don't do anything. Whereas you can't do that because someone's watching you all the time.
So is he a great? It sounds like he's a great communicator and coach, and he's educating you a lot around his own experience as a boxer because he's freshly out the game as well, which is always handy.
Oh yeah, definitely. And obviously, he trains still at Joe's, so obviously, world class coach. There's world champions in that gym, and he's obviously been a world champion himself, so he knows what you have to do to get to that level. And I'm just so grateful that he took me and James on. Really.
And it sounds like it's refreshing to hear the fact that you've mentioned Anthony there in the same breath as your strength and conditioning coach as well, because there's a jigsaw puzzle in sport, and when you want to reach the top or get to the pinnacle of the sport, you've got to put all those jigsaw pieces together. And the fact that Anthony's talking to your strength and conditioning coach sounds like they've got a plan and they're working together towards that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like the other day, obviously, I don't know if you know, but James has got a fight coming up on the 28th of May in Sheffield. And so Anne was saying, it'd be great if we could get Tim up, like, is it backstage or behind, wherever, before the fight, so that he could do, like the warm up. And because Tim, like, he doesn't just, I think a lot of strength and conditioning coaches might just focus on like the strength and conditioning aspect, and then you're out the door. Whereas Tim, like, he's built up my confidence a lot, because when I first went to him, I wasn't really confident in myself. And so he really focuses a lot on like the mental aspect of sport, because I think he used to play rugby as well. So he's been an athlete, and he knows kind of like the doubts and demons that you get in your head, and he wants to kind of like get rid of it all. And so and saying, Tim's part of the team, like we want him up behind before we fight. So Tim was dead excited about that. So yeah, it's like we're like a little team now. It's great.
Yeah, and it is, and boxing is such an individual sport because it's you and the other fighter in the ring with a referee. But ultimately, there is a massive team effort that goes into it, because we're speaking here about you technically getting better off Anthony, you're getting the strength and the conditioning and the fitness there from Tim Holmes. And it sounds like he's touching on the mental aspect of it as well. And you said about self-doubts and stuff. What sort of stuff is he implementing there in terms of the mental aspect of it?
Well, it's more of the sense that, like, he always, like, say if I'd go into a session or I'd look, he'd always address it straight away and be like, what's going on, like, how are you feeling? Or like sometimes when I have doubts of like, I've not got this massive amateur background, and how can I get to the top when I've not got all these experience like these other girls have? But like Tim's like, you're an athlete, like you work so hard, and everything that he does, there's a reason for it. He focuses a lot on recovery as well, like breathing between rounds, and I really struggle getting my breath back, so he focuses a lot on that. But it's just good to have someone that you can talk to and vent to, and when things haven't gone good, or like you feel like you've had a bad session, like I can just ring him up and be like, oh, well, I send him voice notes, so he's probably sick of hearing me, and I'm like, oh, this has happened and blah blah blah, and then he's like, right, okay, take a step back, like you just need to chill out, and then he'll go through it. But yeah, I'm really lucky to have Tim.
It sounds like he's a well-rounded coach from the S&C, and I think that's vital, mate, because touched on it's a team effort, but as a strength and conditioning coach and having a background in it myself, a lot of people tend to think it's just about lifting weights. It's about going in there and flogging yourself in the gym and making sure you come out when you're tired and you're sweaty and you've got to feel fatigue. But that is such a big part of it. And one of the things I learned in my studies is that if you go into the gym and you're not mentally prepared and you're feeling fatigued, then you can't get the optimal level of training out of your body, because at the end of the day, we're human beings. And you spoke, and we'll go on to it in a bit, but you spoke about you working in the NHS there, and you, at the moment, with everything what's going on in the coronavirus and everything, you'll have a lot of external stress and pressures put on you, which ultimately you can't control. So that's going to dictate how hard and how often you can train.
Yeah, definitely. And like Tim does a massive focus on like, sometimes things aren't going to go your way and everything's not going to be amazing. Like there might be a time in a fight where, you know, you do get cut and like, what's the worst things that can happen? So in training sessions, sometimes like he does try and cause a bit of chaos to be like, how do I deal with it? Like the other day, he like pulled my bobble out and I had to train with like my hair all in my face. And do you know, just causing like different like issues for you, just to be like, look, things aren't going to always go your way and you have to deal with it. But you know, it's good that I've got like such a good team behind me that I can just, you know, like when I am feeling like I'm having a bad day, I can sit and talk to them and they'll listen, and it's not just going to be like, oh, get over it, like just you're here to train. It's more like, no, let's talk about how you're feeling, and then we'll train.
Yeah. What's the who would look after your nutrition side from that point of view? Would that be Anthony, or would that be down to your S&C coach?
Well, Tim really helps a lot, but I've got a meal prep company, Box Fit Food Prep, and they deal with all my nutrition basically. Like Tim helps and says like, you know, you should be having this amount of calories and this amount of stuff, and then I just tell Gaz from Box Fit, and then he does it all for me. I'm really fortunate in that sense because like I like, you know, having littler meals. Like I'd rather not sit and have like three big high calorie meals. I like eating little and often, and Gaz does that for me. And I think he does quite a few other professional athletes, but yeah, so it's Gaz and Tim helps me with that as well.
Yeah, and getting quite a lot of exposure now, Box Fit meal preps, aren't they? Because they're looking at like Tyson Fury, they're working with
Joseph Parker,
so
and
James
Scott Fitzgerald.
Yeah, they're some big names now. So it's great that at the moment you've got everything just seems to be clicking into place for you, and it's just a shame that, you know, we hit the pandemic, and because I know he was training for a fight just before we went into the first national lockdown, so that must have been a difficult time for you to do. I remember I felt for you when your fight got called off, because I always remember training for 10 weeks for a fight on one of these shows, and the boxer never turned up, and I was nearly crying because I'd just done like 10 weeks of tough training. So I was like, oh my God, how must that have felt to been in like a training camp and then hear Boris Johnson say we're in a national lockdown.
I know, well, it was a bit like, are we going to go into a lockdown, aren't we? And so we were just a bit like, are we fighting? Are we not fighting? Because there was a show in Liverpool the week before and that went ahead. So I was in the final week of camp and it was like basically just getting my weight down. So I think we got put into a lockdown on the Wednesday, and I was going to be fighting on the Saturday, and I was just gutted because I thought like, was it 2020 last year? Yeah. I thought this is my year. I'm going to be fighting loads. I'm going to try and fight as much as possible, and I'm going to try and work my way up the rankings. And then hopefully like by the end of the year, I could be able to fight for like a Commonwealth or, you know, some form of some title. And obviously I didn't get to fight, and then I've not fought since 2019. So, you know, a little bit like there's nothing you can do really. I mean, it's just been a bit exhausting because like we thought, okay, then we're fighting in September, and then, you know, that got called off, and then we thought, okay, maybe we're fighting in December, and then that got called off. So I've kind of been in camp since like August last year and been around fight weight since like December. Because there's always been potential dates, but then I've kind of just not got on the card, or the people have been put on it. So I'm just like a bit kind of like, I don't know, I've been at my fight weight for so long and raring to go for so long, and these fight dates have been put in front of me and then taken away, and it's kind of just like, I just want to get out and fight now. Like everyone in my gym, Jake's fighting on the 5th of June, James is fighting on the 28th of May, and I'm the one that's like been at fight weight for so long and been ready to go, and I've not got a fight date. So hopefully something can happen soon. But I don't know.
Do you think it could have? Are you using it as a bit of a blessing in disguise in some respects as well? Because you, like you say, you're relatively new. 5 or 6 years is not a long amount of time compared to the other girls. But are you using it as a bit of a blessing because you can work with Anthony now and just, you know, like you say, you was rough around the edges, but now you can smooth yourself up. So when you do go into that ring, then you're going to be at like your optimal.
Yeah, I mean, initially it was a blessing in disguise, like when we first turned over, because we had all this time to just kind of like get to know each other, me, James, and Ant and Jake, and kind of like gel as a team. And now we've been, you know, going since maybe June or July last year. And I feel like we all just kind of need our opportunity to just show how much we've progressed. So yeah, it was a blessing in disguise initially, but now it's kind of like I just want to get out there and show everyone what we've been working on. Because I feel like I look like a completely different fighter now. Like I was good before, but I feel like we've just added so much different aspects to my game. Like I just think that people are going to be, they're going to be impressed.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I know you've been putting some stuff on social media regarding some of the training partners that you've been fighting, you know, Natasha Jones and, you know, the likes, and they're world-class boxers, aren't they? They're not like just journey people who you're going to spar against and learn a few things. I mean, are you finding it against those types of boxers? Are you holding your own? Are you finding it's a big jump up?
I mean, Ant's just happy with like how we've been progressing with each sparring partner. I mean, I have been really fortunate to be trained. Like initially, we was training alongside each other, me and Natasha, and then we did some rounds of sparring together. But obviously, she's fighting Katie Taylor, who's not a southpaw, so you know I can just learn so much from her. And she's sparring in the gym whilst I'm on, you know, that Versa climber, and I'm watching her, and she's looking amazing. And I think, oh, I'd love to do that when I'm next sparring. Or like, you know, sparring Chantel Cameron, she like thinks 3 steps ahead, and she like she'll go this way to make you go that way because she wants to hit you, and then it makes you think, you know, like don't fall for feints all the time. And it's just a massive learning experience. And you know, I can't complain, because what other 2-0 professionals having like this sort of experience that I'm getting. So it's just, you know, it's just really good experience at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, that as much experience as you can get, and that exposure, I suppose, you know, like say, you know, using Natasha there as an example, to get that exposure and like say you've had 2 professional fights, that is like wow. A lot of female boxers would love to give that. I remember being in Total Fitness pre-lockdown, and she was in the sauna in there. She trains with Martin Cullen. While she was at the time, and she was in there, and I didn't know who she was. I didn't know she was a boxer, but as she walked in, I thought, wow, this girl looks like pretty fit. She looks like she trains her. And we got talking, and she was explaining that she was a boxer, and then watching her on TV, and it's like, wow,
She's unbelievable, you know, isn't she?
Yeah, just really, really good standard of boxing, you know, and it makes you, because it's easy as well, like, before I actually got into a ring, it's quite easy to sit in your armchair, watch your boxing match, and think that is easier than it looks. But when you actually get in a ring and you've got so many different elements and things to think about, it's like you'll learn to appreciate, number one, what these people put the bodies through on a daily basis to train and get into that ring, but also the pressures that they feel in the ring, everything. It's, you know, it's not just 2 people throwing punches. This is like a really smart concentration game as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I was saying to Tanya, she's getting trained by Scott Quigg. I was saying, you know, sometimes you're in the ring and like you're focusing so much and you can see this punch coming and you're like, I should move my head now. And you see it coming to you in slow motion, you get hit with it and you think, I knew that was coming. Why have I not moved my head? But it's like because of all that other external factors and thinking like, oh, if I go this way, or if I, you know, it's just, yeah, it's just a bit crazy sometimes.
What do you think's been the biggest learning curve? What do you think's the biggest thing you've learned since coming into the sport?
Like dealing with your emotions, like sparring, it can be a very emotional thing, and getting, you know, that fight or flight response. But you just kind of need to keep calm and, you know, listen to your coach in the corner and like do the game plan that they've set out. And it's quite hard to, you know, when you're sparring someone and they might be being dirty and rubbing, you know, that bit of the gloves in your face or standing on your foot, it's hard to not react like, you know, aggressively and you still need to stick to your game plan. So I think that's been a massive thing. But also the fitness, like you think you're fit, like, but when you start boxing, like you realize you're not the fittest person at all. Like it's just a different level of fitness. And then it's like you can get boxing fit, but then it's like sparring fit. That's just another level, like just controlling yourself as well. So they're probably like the biggest things.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's same in any sport. I mean, in rugby, it's, you know, I knew like when I was playing against people like Gazok or, you know, some aggressive people, we'd get at them and we'd like maybe try and stamp on the foot or just press down on the face as we're getting up in a tackle, just to try and emotionally get them into that. Yeah, get them in the red zone really, and to get them really emotionally involved. And I suppose it's exactly the same in boxing. Everyone's trying to take you off your game plan. So how you deal with that is massive.
Yeah, because I think like I used to be really reactive, and then Ants realised like you need to not get frustrated at things like that and just calm yourself and just go back to what we were saying that we were going to do. So that's something that I've been working on as well.
Away from rugby, well, I touched on that, you know, you'll have a lot of external factors going on because you're working for the NHS and you've been a big part in the coronavirus and, you know, working in the hospitals. And how's that been emotionally for you as well?
It was really like a massive change at first and really emotionally draining, because when it first started, like no one really knew anything about it and we didn't know how to treat it. And, you know, the consultants at the hospital, they're amazing, and they were obviously doing so much research and getting things from different countries like, you know, China and America, and how they were dealing with it and having to do all this research and then, you know, implement our own clinical trials, which one of our pharmacists, I think he was like the lead for, Greg. You know, so it's been a massive change, and we've been working, and, you know, they've been slowly rolling out, you know, more PPE and, you know, changing the way you work. And now everyone had to wear like a uniform and then, you know, use all the PPE to go in with the patients. And it's just really scary because, you know, you could, like, I was working on a coronavirus ward at the beginning, and, you know, throughout I've been on coronavirus wards and then on general med wards. And it's scary because, you know, like, you could be going in, and I know like I'm young and fit and I potentially could be real like okay with the virus, but then say if I saw my mum or my dad, like I could pass it to them and then they could be really unwell with it. So it was draining because I couldn't go and see my family, and like I'm a massive family like person. I love going and seeing my family. I love my nephew so much, and I couldn't. So that was like a big thing for me, not being able to go and like hug my mom or hug my nephew, and, you know, like showing. It was just like I can't really explain it. Like all wards were being shut down and turned into coronavirus wards, and then like you'd go in one day and you'd go and speak to a patient and they'd be fine, and then the next day like they'd be put on palliative medication, so they'd be dying. And you just think, how can someone deteriorate so fast? And then you think like that could be my family, and you'd see like family members come in and like families dying, and it's just horrible. Like we had one of our consultants, he actually died from it, and they brought his hearse around the hospital and everyone was clapping for him. But yeah, it's just, yeah, when you think about it, like you try to not think about it and just like you go to work, do your work, and then you don't think about it. But then like when you talk about all of it and then think about it, it's just really sad.
Yeah, and there's, you see a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are taking it serious, and there's a lot of people who weren't taking it serious, and they were saying, "Oh, it's being blown out of proportion." So, you know, getting your first-hand experience, what's your take on that?
I think like, you know, I don't think it's been blown out of proportion at all, because I think like I was in A&E the other day and this guy was like, oh, like say this is a fake, blah, 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 and stuff like that. And I just think like it's so insensitive, because people like know people who've died from it, and then they'll say, you know, it's definitely not fake. Like when people have been ill, and because we've not been allowed visitors, like some people haven't even been able to come and say bye to the family members. So then how can you go around and say, oh, they've died of a fake virus when they've not?
Did you see a lot of, and a lot of people just saying, oh, it's only affecting the elderly, but was you seeing a lot of people in hospital were it difficult because there was similar age to you and they were struggling?
First-hand experience I haven't seen. Like I've seen like young people come in with coronavirus and they've been breathless and things like that, but I haven't seen many young people dying of it. But it's not really the elderly, like it's like 40, 50-year-olds, they're not old. And they're
I'm 40 next year, so that scares me.
Yeah, you're not 40, you don't look 40.
Oh, thanks.
But like, I think it's just, it's like when people get the flu, people get it differently. Some people can get it and be asymptomatic. Some people can get it and be really unwell with it. So I don't think it's just, predominantly like an age thing. But I think, so long as we're all being careful and, wearing our masks, washing our hands, keeping a safe distance, I just don't think that we can, it's not that much to worry about if we're following government advice.
Yeah, and like we always touch on this with different guests because it seems to crop up, but do you get a lot of help around like the emotional side of it? Because it must, things like that going into, everybody who's been involved in the pandemic, really, regardless of whether they've had it or not, they seem to be emotionally involved in some respect, and they've struggled. And is it something you've had help from the NHS? Have they been very supportive in that respect?
I think if you want, they do have like services where you can go and get advice and like talk to someone and counsel them and things like that. I do think they do, but I'm really fortunate in the sense that like my partner Ross, like he's very like an emotionally stable person, whereas I can be like very erratic. So I can come home and he's like, he just calms me, and it's someone that I can talk to and he like can rationalize my feelings and things like that. So I'm really fortunate in the sense, but it's more of like, the people that work at Asda and Tesco, places like that, like they've been working throughout the pandemic, and have they had the help and support that they need? Like, did they have all the PPE that they needed? Like, I know with the NHS that we have had it because everyone's been like, oh, the NHS need this, and that, and then the government have given it, but have all the people who've been working throughout the pandemic, have they got the help that they need and support that they need? I don't know.
I think, and there'll probably be a big backlog of this now as we see some normality coming through. I think hopefully, people will be getting the help that they need, around it. What's the future then now for yourself? What is the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of your fight? Is there anything in the pipeline, or are you still sort of just waiting and not knowing much?
Well, like I said, I'm down at flyweight. I think my manager Steve's been talking to people, and hopefully, potentially, there could be a fight date, but none set in stone as of yet, and none that have been mentioned to me. But I think Ant and Steve have been working really hard to try and reach out to promoters to try and get me on a show. I've been working hard throughout the pandemic, so hopefully someone should let me get on a show.
Is there anyone in particular that you're looking at who you'd think, I really want that fight?
There's no one as of yet. I mean, I'm still only 2-0 and I'm still learning and trying to learn how to box really. But anyone really, anyone, at my level, I don't mind fighting. As long as I can, as long as it enables me to get on a show, I don't really mind. I don't really care who it is.
Do you think they'll try and fast track you a little bit because, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass or anything, but you are fast, you're strong, you're a natural mover, and you seem like you've been doing it a lot longer than, the 5 or 6 years that you have been training. So do you think is that something you've spoke about, or do they just want to ease you in because you're still only 26?
Yeah, I think with female boxing as well, they do progress them really fast. I mean, Shannon Corney's, she's 7 fights or 8 fights in, she's a world champion. Terry was the same. These girls kind of do get fast because the talent pool, like the depth of the division, there's not really many fighters to fight. Hopefully, within the next few years, more and more girls will start turning professional and we'll get more talent in each division. But no one's really told me like a plan of like, we'll move you fast, or I think it's just, you know, because I only had like 7 fights as a through white collar and then 2 fights. So I've only really had 9 fights in my whole life. So hopefully, you know, get a bit more experience and then, but I don't mind whatever Steve and Ant think is best for me, I'll just do, because obviously, you know, they've got so much experience in boxing. Whatever they think is best, I'll just do it.
Yeah, so it's good that you're willing to listen to that advice, you know, and from the experience, because it sounds like from what you've said, you've got a really good team around you, and you know they'll be looking for your best interest. So, Rhiannon, it's been brilliant to speak to you, and you know, wish you all the best for the future. It's been really insightful. I've got some really good stuff from that, and I've no doubt you will be the next big thing. I'm sure you'll be a boxing world champion, and then before we know it, we'll see you in Celebrity Jungle or Dancing on Ice or something like that.
That's the dream. Strictly Come Dancing.
do you find yourself that you're trying to brand yourself as well now as well? Because it's a big thing in sport, isn't it? Because we can, when we do it, when we're sports people and then the sport's gone, we can be left with nothing, you know. So are you trying to brand yourself in that respect as well?
I don't really think too much about it because social media is like a massive thing, isn't it? But like, I don't really like posting on social media, but I know I have to do it. So maybe like later on in my career, I might try and do things like that. But as of yet, like I'm still, you know, quite uncomfortable with the whole trying to like sell myself on social media. So as of yet, not really, no.
Well, Anthony's doing a great job for it anyway. I mean, the stuff he puts out there is really bigging you up for big things. So it's, you know, again, I wish you all the best for the future, and it's been really good to speak to you.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show. Hopefully you can have me on it again.
Yeah, well, hopefully when the next time you're on, you've got a belt with you. So
I know, I'll be sat there like
that. So, no, thanks very much for that. It's been brilliant.
Oh, thank you.